Since Helen Rochford Brennan was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in July 2012, she really has been a fearless champion of people living with dementia and has helped to raise awareness of people living with dementia and also the profile of human rights for people with dementia in Ireland, in Europe, and further afield. Helen, it's great to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Cormac. It's nice to be here again 8 years later. Ha ha, hardly. I'm glad to be with you this morning. And I suppose, can I say that after 8 years, a couple of years ago, we started to get funding, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful that after us shouting for many years for money for services for people with dementia and of course services and supports for our supporters and our carers, and us during all that period of time, my life has been very busy with the Irish Dementia Working Group, advocating for change, advocating for the removal of stigma, for proper budgets, for having our voices heard, for hopefully one day soon we will be part of that multidisciplinary team that is happening at this very moment within our health services from which we are excluded. When they discuss a pathway of care for us, which is what we want funding for. Sadly, there isn't adequate funding or support for any of us. So a few people in the room may remember these words: a lot done, more to do. And there is a lot done, and there's more to do. For me, over all those years, nothing much has been done about the urban-rural divide. And I find that really, really stressful. You know, us people in the country, we deserve the same rights as people within cities across this country, and we do not have that. There is no comparison in the services we have in rural and remote areas. And look, we've been asking for advice, we've been asking for support over all the years, and we're hoping that finally this will be recognised, Cormac, and that, you know, it's still disheartening when I meet people or people call me and ask me for advice. What am I to do? We have the Understand Together campaign, which is raising the profile on dementia. People are trying now with COVID. It's been difficult to get diagnosed, but when they're diagnosed, there are no services. And honestly, I came out of the supermarket only the other day and I met a young woman who's has a young family, and she was like this: what am I going to do? It's 2021, folks. You know, sure. When are we going to get an adequate budget?
Sure, Helen. And Helen, I mean, you mentioned there that you've actually been involved in the last 8 pre-budget submission campaigns for the ASI. That's some feat. And look, you know, we remember on the very first, you know, pre-budget campaign, you stood there at the gates of the Dáil with your husband, Sean. And I know Sean sadly passed away last December. So I just want to ask you now, how are you coping now as somebody living with dementia?
Life is very difficult. Cormac, without Sean. I live alone with my dog Lexi. You know, it's lonely, it's isolating. I miss his laughter. I miss dropping him off to the pub and picking up his friends, wondering how many I'll pick up on a night to bring home and drop off and have the chat and have some fun. He was a huge support to me, and he helped me with everything, you know, on my daily life. He read me articles, he shared his orange with me, he read things for me and always left notes, especially things of interest while I was away doing my advocacy work. Look, thanks to local services, in particular Sligo Cancer Support, you know, I've been able to get counselling. I've been able to learn to live again. There's no book on widowhood, and I can tell you, I Googled and I Googled for help for the person with dementia that was left. There's nothing. There's lots of work for lots and lots I could read about carers, but there's nothing for the person with dementia. It's like as if our spouses will never, our partners will never pass away. So I'm afraid to cook, to be honest, because I leave the stove on. I have left the door open, and I won't tell you all how many times. I forgot to take my medicine, and I only realized when the pharmacy called to remind me the other day that I had missed it 3 times last month. I have all the strategies in place. I have all the notes by the door. But unfortunately, I really don't have any support. The days are long. We don't visit anymore like we used to in rural Ireland. COVID has impacted on that. So what I asked for person-centered support for me, my friend Agnes in Scotland, who many of you may know, receives 10 hours self-directed weekly care. And that's all I'm asking for. I get really anxious, and I have got so anxious now and agitated, to be honest with you about it, that I stopped asking, because I did a mini mental test, and the PHN told me that my score was too high on the day. So I couldn't receive support. So we need home care, person-centered home care packages. And you see one person with dementia, you see we're all different. You see Kevin and myself today, we're completely different types of dementia. So we need the national dementia. We know that we have a strategy and a model of care, which is about to be implemented. Do you know what? It's a grand document, as we say in the West, but without a time frame. What good is it? And our families, all of us, as Alina so eloquently spoke, we all need supports. We need supports. We need to have people who are diagnosed, as I said earlier, with the Understand Together, when they're diagnosed and there's no services. So, we can have all the documents in the world, but if they're not implemented fully, and if there isn't timeframes, I ask, what business model in the world doesn't have a time frame? So I'm clearly aware, that there are other people like myself that are totally frustrated. And it's not my voice. I'm not just speaking on behalf of myself. I'm speaking on behalf of the voiceless.
Sure. And I mean, in Nora Owen's video earlier on, she talked about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of its impact on people with dementia and the carers. I mean, have you got, a view on this, and how did you find the pandemic living through it?
Well, now, Cormac, we were locked up and we were locked down. There was many of us locked in nursing homes that couldn't see anybody. We were locked in hospitals. We were locked at home. It was difficult for people with dementia to create a new routine. It seemed so long, the days, they were never ending, so much isolation. We met the neighbours when we snuck out for a walk when we were supposed to be locked up. But I mean, I just had to get out of the house, to be honest. We couldn't get to the post office, we couldn't go to the bank, we couldn't go shopping, we couldn't, for people like myself who are advocates, we couldn't do any of that. And, if you were lucky enough to have home care, you might meet somebody. But when you live in a rural, isolated and remote area, it was really, really difficult for those people with dementia and older people, will I say, as an older person myself. We stayed up. We really paid a high price, Cormac. We stayed at home. We ensured we were not in hospitals. We weren't putting any unnecessary, I'm not sure the word is, unnecessary visits to doctors or hospitals. So we didn't overwhelm the health service. And, there was a lot of chat about us protecting us. And let me tell you, people with dementia, we protected the health service, as I've just said. So now we would hope, by doing all that we were supposed to do, we stood in solidarity with our health service professionals. But we want that in return. Today we want solidarity in return. We're resilient, I suppose we learned a lot about technology, and I better say this, we learned a lot of technology. We learned about words like platform and Zoom. Well, sure, the only platform I knew about was a train station, and Zoom was, zoomed in on something. So we learned all of these things, but we had to learn them. But I want to think about all the people that never had that opportunity, whether it's from remote Donegal, Kerry, Galway, wherever, Sligo, those people didn't have a chance. We need to always remember that going forward with COVID, with the next pandemic, that we really are in a better place of finding the necessary supports for people. And we can never understand that we couldn't get into day centres, because, to be honest, in the beginning, yes, I could understand. But as time has gone on and centres have been closed down, up and down this country, there are loads of town halls, there are loads of family resource centres. Why couldn't we be innovative? And why can't the government give the funding to get people out of their own homes? Okay. So for me, can I just finish by saying on that, COVID, we're grateful for technology, but can I tell you, there's nothing we miss more than our human connection, and we want to make sure that there's nothing, when we have to come off the phone or off a Zoom call, it's leave. There's no chance there for somebody that's down to reach out and connect with them and ask them what's wrong. So I think from a dementia perspective, technology has been good. It's been good for those of us that have had capacity and access. There's lots of people that have no broadband, or not the ability to be able to learn how to use technology.
And Helen, just to finish up there, I mean, I know you're a huge believer and advocate for, healthcare for all, dementia supports. I mean, is there one thing you'd like to say to all the TDs and senators that are here today? Is there one message you would like to leave them with?
Well, there's a couple. When I spoke to you in 2019, which I met you in person, I asked you to get off the fence and take action and to work for your constituents. Yes, you have done some, but I asked for a standalone budget and not piecemeal. The funding we get is not adequate. As we said before this meeting, we shouldn't be asking for money. It's our healthcare. If it's cancer services, by golly, they get all the funding they need. There are 336 half hours in a week, Cormac, and we take care of ourselves 335 of those. So I want to remind you again that the HSE definition of home care is a shower. Well, let me tell you, as long as we're clean and I have my lipstick on, I'm fine. Well, I'm not fine. So I'm asking you to please make sure we have proper services. We had high hopes for Sláinte care and then discovered that people with dementia, we weren't even included in Sláinte care. So what kind of a program is that for government? So we're not. So needless to say, we are raging in one way, and in another way, we're glad that the people that stepped down from Sláinte care did, because at least we may have a review of it and we may be included and remove, it's our right, it's our human right to be involved in Sláinte care. So I will finish by saying that thanks again for what you've done. And I will have to add the famous words of our health service, that it needs to be quickly fixed and it needs to be a service for all of us. I know there were words that said, that somebody said at one stage, it's not fit for purpose. Many days, many of us with dementia in this country wake up and we agree with those words. It is not fit for purpose and it is not fit to eliminate us. So what do we want? We want person-centered care with adequate budgets throughout the year. And I hope all of our politicians will step up to the plate and ensure that we're recognised first as a disability. We need to be recognised as disability. And I want to tell you, your constituents are working and they need to stay on their jobs and they need to be guarded under the law. So we need to be recognised as disability. We want you to be innovative and create better budgets. We want our blue barking badge so we can continue, for those of us who can drive, that we can continue to drive. And as I said, we want you to be innovative and get us out of our houses. Get our resource centres up and running, because we don't need to be isolated and sad and lonely. And I hate to say this 8 years later. And to be honest with you, it breaks my heart that I'm here with you today and ask you the same thing 8 years later. And I know Denise is going to speak, but Denise's husband, Seamus, was with me and he was one of my dearest friends. And, we asked you then, and I'm asking you again, all those years later, to please be innovative and think outside the box and support all of us.
Helen, thanks so much for that today, and such powerful words.